Okay, and we're back at Genesis Camp. We've had a little stop for a little while after Susan's session. We're ready to go again. We've now got Joe Waltham. Is that how? Sorry, that's how you pronounce your name, isn't it, Joe?
It is Waltham. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I should have asked you that a moment ago. Joe from the UK, and your session today is how to find that hook that you need. So, talking about Genesis hooks. And related stuff. So I'll leave you to it. I'll collect some questions for you at the end of your session, and I'll come back and we'll do some Q&A when you've gone through. So best of luck.
Okay, thanks, Peter.
Over to you.
Hi, I'm Joe Waltham, and you're now coming to me in the UK. So welcome, Genesis Camp, to the UK. I run a web design agency called Kalia Web. We specialize in WordPress and Genesis websites. You can find me on Twitter either as Kalia Web as my business company name, or as Joe Waltham, which is my personal Twitter account. And I also recently launched a blog called joewaltham.com, where I'm going to be sharing more code tutorials and things like that. Okay, now this talk is about Genesis hooks and filters. Genesis action hooks and filters. Sorry, I keep saying hooks when I mean action hook. So if I do that, I'm sorry. So Genesis action hooks and filters. And whilst I've been working with Genesis for a long time, I distinctly remember getting quite confused on what are these. And if you're going to do any serious development with Genesis, you really got to understand these, and they're so powerful once you do get them. And so this talk is for someone who has already been working with Genesis a little bit. Maybe you've been copy and pasting snippets into your functions file, and you're reaching the point where you'd like to understand, what does this code do? What does it mean? And how can you write code like this for yourself? So where should we start? Right, so basically we're going to start that a hook, I forget to change my slides. There we go. So a hook basically is a line of code that exists in the software you're using that enables you to attach your code to it. I just realized I'm not sharing my screen, so you can't even see my slides. Sorry. There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. I forgot to share my screen. Okay, so a hook is a placeholder in the code that has already been made and is available to you to add your code to it to action at that particular point. So think of it as a trigger point. So basically, it sits at a certain place in the code, and you can attach your code to it to either add something, maybe remove something, or to change something. So there's two types of hooks. Action hooks allow you to add your code to a specific place on the website, and a filter hook allows you to change the output of that code. Okay, so I think the best thing to do is let's look at an example. So here we got my little demo site. I'm just using the Genesis I just realised I haven't deleted out my snippets. Sorry. Let's reload that. There we go. So this is a Genesis sample. I'm actually using the Genesis Beta 2.2, so things look slightly different to what you're used to. Don't worry about that. So basically, we've got our header, we've got our navigation, we've got our posts. If we go to the home page, we've got our home page, we've got our sidebar and our footer. And what you don't realize is actually this whole thing is full of hooks. Now, this is a great plugin called Genesis Visual Hooks, and I'm just going to set that going, and I'll show you how to install that in a minute. It shows you where all these hooks are. So you can see here that this demo title, so the site title, is attached to this Genesis site title hook. Our navigation here is attached to Genesis after header. Our homepage title is attached to Genesis entry header. So you can see how all these little hooks exist already, and Genesis is really powerful in that it creates these hooks and then it uses them to add their code to it. Okay. Now let's say well, let me show you how to install the Genesis Visual Hooks plugin first of all. Here we go. There we go. Genesis Visual Hooks plugin. It's by Christopher Cochran, and I'm going to be using this plugin a lot during the course of this tutorial. So, take note. Right. Okay. So the Genesis Visual Hooks plugin, once you've got it installed, it gives us these options to simply on our page to see all the hooks that are available. So these are all the action hooks available. And we were talking about filters. These are all the filter hooks. So, right, it's a really good plugin. Right. Now, say you want to add, this is a blog and you've got a sponsor and they want to have a link on your site and you want to add a link somewhere, around about here, somewhere after the navigation. Now, if you didn't want to get into using the code, what you might do already is maybe use the Genesis Simple Hooks plugin by Nathan Rice. Okay, so if we go to Genesis Simple Hooks, and you can see here a list of all the hooks that are available, and you can see there's just loads of them. Okay, so let's think about, we want to add that in. So if we go back to the front of our site, we want to add it in here. If we switch our action hooks on, we can see that here probably the nearest hook we've got is the Genesis after header. So let's go back to Genesis. Where's it gone? Simple hooks. And we're looking for Genesis after header. Where's that one? Before header, header, Genesis after header. Right, so P class, I'm going to center align it. Whoops, if I can type, align center. A href equals, typing. Our sponsors. I get a feeling I should have saved all my snippets first. There we go. We got. Okay, so we've put it into Genesis after header, P class align center, A href, oursponsors.com, our sponsor site. Okay, let's save that. View the front of our site, and there it is. So that is essentially how straightforward it is that I can place anything I want extra on this site by using these hooks. Now, I'll be honest, I don't really use the Genesis Simple Hooks plugin much myself because being a coder, I'm much more happier being in the functions.php file and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get rid of that now, otherwise it's going to appear all the time. So let me just go where that is again and delete that out. And save changes. So that's one way you can make changes to your site using hooks, but there are other ways. So let's first of all say, where are we? What is a function? So I'm going to be talking about functions a lot here, and I want to make sure that you kind of understand what I mean by a function. So a function is a collection of lines of code that does one simple task. It's often called by another function. That's how it gets executed. And if you're looking into code, you can see a call to a function by this line. So my function, and you've got the brackets in there. And then a function is defined. So how you write your code is you use this function, and then obviously the name of your function, and then within the curly braces is what you want that function to do. Okay. So let's go back. What do we want to do? So we understand what a function is. Obviously, there's more to functions than that, but let's just worry about that. Right. So I need to write a function that's going to add our sponsors link. So I have a function. I'm going to call the function jmw add sponsors link. Okay, and I'm going to echo out my p class equals align. Oh, talk about typing. Align center. A href equals Don't forget the semicolon on the end. Right. So we have got node function. So that's how we create our function. We've got our function name. Now, there's a few things to note about the name that I've used here. I've prefixed with my initials. That's to ensure that I'm using a unique function name. The last thing you want is duplicate function names. Your code will go horribly wrong if you have those. So a lot of people use their initials, or they might use the name of their theme or the name of the plugin or something like that. And then I really want to have a function name that states clearly what this function does. Now, I'm sure if Gary is watching, he's going to wonder if I'm now going to talk about documenting this function properly. And yes, you really should, but I'm not going into that now. Sorry, Gary. Right, so there we go. So we've got our function, but it doesn't do anything yet because it's not being called from anywhere. So we want to add it to a hook. Now let's go back to our website. And if we just put on our function hooks, again, it's the same thing. We had the Genesis after header. Right, so to add in a code to a hook, to add to an action hook, we need an add action. Okay, so add action is the WordPress function that exists that allows you to add your code to a action hook. So first you need to put what is the name of the hook. I've forgotten already. Genesis after header. Okay, so the first argument is the name of the hook you're attaching to. The second argument is the name of the function that you want to run. On source link. Okay. And at this point, that is as simple as it is, really. So we've got our add action, the name of the action we're adding to, the name of our function, and then underneath we've got our functions defined. Right, so I'm just still checking for any typos on that. Hopefully that's going to work. And if I take that off, refresh the page. Right, so there you go. It works. Fantastic. I feel a little bit of relief, to be honest. So you can see now, with just a few lines of code, we're able to add this link here. Okay, so that's really cool. So now we're going to think, well, okay, what else can we do? Well, let's say that our sponsor also wants us to have a link down here. And let me just think about that. So we also want to have the link down here. So let's think, let's put our action hooks on. And I want an action that's going to be somewhere down here. And well, I'm a good believer in trial and error because, you know, I'm working locally. I'm using desktop server. I'm not working on a live site. Trial and error is fine. Okay, so Genesis after loop. Now this is where having small functions really helps. Small functions that do one thing. So we're going to use Genesis after loop function. And all you need to do is to call our existing function, which is JMD add sponsors link, JMW add sponsors link. Okay, so let's save that. Let's take our things off. And yeah, we've got our sponsors over here too. So by having quite small functions that do a simple thing, you're able to add them in multiple places. Okay, I hope that kind of makes sense. Right, so, okay, so now you've got a way to add code, but what if there's something on this site that you don't like? Let me go to the blog post page. Right, so on here, we've got all this, you know, this post meta. And I don't know, let's just say I've decided to take a dislike to that. I don't really like having that there. I want to remove that post meta. So because that post meta function, because the function that outputs that post meta is attached to an action hook, we can actually unattach it using a remove action. And I'll be honest, I am just going to copy and paste this. So we need a remove action. Same thing, Genesis entry footer. Sorry, I didn't show you how I know it's a Genesis entry footer. If we put our action hooks back on, we can see that this is underneath the Genesis entry footer. Okay, so Genesis entry footer. But I don't actually know the name of the function that creates the entry footer. So I'm going to Google it. So I want to know how to change the, what do I want to do? I want to remove the Genesis post meta. I always get meta and info muddled up. Genesis post meta. And yep, so take note of this, mystudiopress.com/snippets. Yeah, there's lots of good stuff on there for you to look. And you've probably already seen them. So here we go. So, oh, that's an old one. Hang on a minute. A lot of the hooks changed their names in Genesis 2. So you've always got to make sure that you are looking at the HTML5 versions. Okay, where is it? There we go. So it's called Genesis post meta. Well, you know, this is really good. Genesis is great. They use some really simple, easy to remember names, and they all follow a convention, so you can have a good guess sometimes. So let's do that. So Genesis entry meta. Okay, don't forget the semicolon. Okay, let's see. Does that work? Let's go to our site. Let's clear those hooks off and refresh. Oh, it's still there. Oh, there's nothing like doing it live and it not working. Hang on, did I save that? Oh, that's annoying. Remove action, Genesis entry footer, Genesis entry. Ah, hang on. It's because it's Genesis post meta. If you use the wrong name, it won't work. Need to be precise like that. There we go. Oh, phew, it's gone. Right, so notice that it's gone on that page, but it's also gone on my single post page as well. So if you're reaching the point where you think, okay, so I want to remove the post meta from here, but I want to keep it when it's on a single post page, then you need to do what's called a conditional remove. And the best thing for that would be to just do a Google search on what we're going to do. So conditionally remove Genesis post meta, and have a look at this web post by Jonathan Perez of Surefire Web Services. He's got a nice little post about that. I haven't got enough time to go into all of this, but do note that at the beginning of his tutorial he uses the pre-Genesis hooks, pre-Genesis 2 hooks, and it's only later on he uses the Genesis 2 hooks. So as you've already spotted, the hooks, a lot of the hooks changed their names when Genesis 2 came out. Okay. Now we have discovered how to add stuff and how to remove stuff. And if you put those two things together, we can actually move stuff around. So let's go back to my website. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. But I don't like how my primary navigation and my secondary navigation are just like too close to each other. What I want to do is move this one above, somewhere above. Let's put our action hooks on. So I want to remove this secondary navigation to somewhere, I don't know, how about Genesis before header? So first, I must admit, I'm saving myself the typing. I'm going to grab my code. I know I'm just going to pop that in there. So first of all, again, I would go searching in the Genesis snippets. And we've got a whole load of stuff on navigation menus. And if we look, this one is how to move the primary navigation. And this one is how to move the secondary navigation. So we're removing it. The function is Genesis do subnav. We're removing it from Genesis after header, and we're going to add it to Genesis before header. And you can see with just really short lines of code, we don't have to worry about the function that actually does the subnav. We're just going to move it from one hook to another. Right, okay, let's save that. Go back to my post, take the action hooks off. Oh, okay. Okay, and our menu's up here. So you can now, hopefully starting to get a picture of just how powerful these action hooks are to enable you to rearrange your site into pretty much whatever configuration you want. Right, hopefully you have followed that so far. Okay, so there's one final thing that we really need to cover before we move on, and that is priority. Now, as you can imagine, you've got all these hooks, and you can add more than one function to those hooks, so they can all stack up, or you can add 3, 4, 5, 10 functions to one hook. So what order do they get executed in? Well, by default, if you haven't defined any priority, they will be executed in the order in which they are processed in the code. And as I think your theme function file is the last one that's processed, so your changes are going to be processed last. So if you want to change that, we need to specify the priority. Now, by default, all the add actions have a priority of 10, and a number that's lower than 10 will give it will make it execute earlier, and a number that's greater than 10 it will execute later. Okay, so let's look at, I'm trying to think what example I was going to use. So let's look at my sponsors link here. Right, so it sits nicely underneath my primary navigation. I didn't give it a priority. This primary navigation is also on the Genesis entry, Genesis after header hook, and our code came after the navigation, so it sits underneath it. What if I want this to be above the navigation? Right, so the navigation is executed on 10 by default, as is our thing. So what I want to do is I need to change our code here. Which one is it? This one? Genesis after header. And if I give that a lower priority than 10, because the primary navigation is output on 10, let's make it 8. The reason why I don't make it 9 is because maybe later on I'm going to want to add something else in that's going to be between the two things. So I make it 8. I've got a few numbers to play with. If I now refresh my screen, hopefully, yeah, so great. So we've been able to specify that we want that to exist up the top. Okay. Now you're going to find, let me just show you again here. So our add action now has the name of the hook, the name of our function, and its priority. So if we don't specify the priority, it's a 10. Excuse me. You'll see these priorities, you'll see this number crop up in a number of different places. If we go to, where do we want to go to? We want to go to entry content. And you'll see, is it entry content? No, it's entry header, entry header, entry header. Okay, so if you look at our entry header, you see on this entry header hook, we've got the name of the post, and we've got our post info, and so on. And there's a few other things attached to that entry header. And if we, let's close that one down. So now these are the snippets to remove these functions. So just ignore that it says remove action for the moment. So on Genesis entry header, we've got the Genesis entry header markup open that executes a priority of 5. The markup close is at 15. The post info is at 12. And the post title, because there's no priority specified, is going to go at 10. So actually, the order that they are then executed is the Genesis entry header markup open, 5. The Genesis do post title at 10. The Genesis post info at 12. And the Genesis entry header markup close at 15. Now, the thing to note here, and this is what happens here, if a function is added to a hook at a particular priority, if you then want to remove that function from that hook, you have to remove it from that priority as well. So again, if you try and remove a function from a hook and it doesn't work, you might want to go and check what is the priority of that. Okay. Oh, excuse me, I'm just going to have a sip of water. I hope that explains action hooks a little bit for you. So now I want to cover, okay, so what is a filter? And a filter is like an action hook in that it is code that has been written already to enable you to do something. But instead of allowing you to add code to a particular point, it allows you to change the output of an existing function. So let's have a look at my demo post. Where's it gone? Let's take these off. So let's have a look at this post of mine. And here's an example. I've got my author box here, but I think my gravatar image is a little bit small. So I kind of want to have a bigger picture of me there. So I'm going to Google, I always prefix my searches with Genesis, just because, you know, that's what I'm usually searching for. Genesis, change gravatar, change author gravatar. Oh, look, I've Googled it before. What a surprise. There we go. So I'm back to the StudioPress snippet site, and let's have a look. Okay, below is the code to modify the size of your gravatar on your site. Okay, so we're going to use an add filter. Okay, so it's just like the add action, but we have an add filter. We've got the name of the filter we're going to use, which in this case is the Genesis author box gravatar size. We've got the name of the function that we're going to write, so you know, whatever. And this is our function defined. And here's an important thing to note: the size is a variable that's being passed to our function. Okay, and then we must return a value. So we are changing a value. So this is the value we're going to change, and we've got to ensure that we return it. Okay, so let's just grab this code. Oops. Oh, let's grab that, and let's just pop that in our functions file. I'm going to want it a little bit bigger than 80. I'm going to make it 120. So, okay, things to note when you're using a filter is you use an add filter, not an add function. You have your filter name, you have your function name, and you must remember that you are going to be changing a variable. So you need to read that variable in, and you need to return it. Hang on, I hope you can see that. It's right at the bottom of my screen, I just realized. You see that okay? Okay. Okay, hopefully you can see that okay. So I'm going to save that and go back here and refresh the page. And yeah, brilliant. It's bigger. That's just what I want. Okay. Whenever you're writing a filter or a function for a filter, whenever you open your curly braces that you're going to write your filter, just always add this return line in. It just ensures that you don't forget it. So if you're using a filter, you always got to return something. Okay, let's use another example. On my post, under is it tutorials? Yeah, under my tutorials, I have no posts under here, and I don't really like this text. Sorry, no content match your criteria. I want to change that. So this Genesis visual hooks also shows us the filter hooks, and we got a Genesis no post text filter. Brilliant. So I'm going to actually write this one out rather than copy and paste. So we need our add filter, Genesis no posts text. Hang on, let's just double check that I spelled that right. Let's go with that. No post text. Okay, then we got the name of my function, which is going to be jmw change no posts text. And then I'm going to write my function, jmw change no posts text, open brackets. Now, I'm going to be changing something, changing text. But before I do anything else, I want to return text. Okay. Okay. So what do I want to change text to? Well, at the moment, it is the sorry, no content found. So I want to change my text to, I don't know, nothing here. Okay, so that was a nice simple function. So I'm reading in text, I'm changing text, and I'm returning text. Let's give it a go. Let's be clear that. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Forgot the semicolon. There we go. Doing it live. There we go. Oh, hang on. Clear. Okay. So there we have our, nothing here. Text. Brilliant. That's all there is. Okay. Right. Now, sometimes, though, you'll see some other numbers start and appear at the end of here. So if you're looking at filters and stuff like that, and you might see this one might be written like this. And you're going to think, what's this? So this, again, is the priority I was telling you about. I'm not aware of any filters that are actioned at a priority of something other than 10. I could be wrong. If someone knows, I'd love you to tell me. And then you've got this number 2 at the end. And that says that there's going to be passing 2 variables to this function. And as it happens to be, it is context in this case. All right. Now, I know that because I looked it up earlier. Don't worry if you. So this means that we're, by default, if we didn't have these numbers here, by default it's 10 and 1. So you're passing 1 variable, and that's the variable you're returning. So this time we're actually passing 2 variables, and that is size and context. Now, the first variable, size, is the one we're going to return, and context is another variable that we can use in our code to maybe conditionally set something. So in this case, I know that context will return, hang on, let's go back to here. On my single post, it will return the word single. And if I go to my author page, it will return something other than single. I must admit, I don't actually know off the top of my head what it returns. So let's say, for example, on this post, on my single post, I want my gravatar size to be the 120. But on my author page, because it's all about me, I'm going to want to have my picture bigger. So we need to change this to be conditional. So we've got if single equals context, then return 120, else return 180. Don't forget the semicolon. Okay, so that basically says that the context, so, you know, if we're on a page that is the single post page, then, yeah, okay, sorry, just double checking something, then return it at 120, else return it at 180. Now, I must admit, I don't like these 2 return statements, so I'm actually going to change that to return size. And I'm going to change this to size equals 120, size equals 180. I really hope you can see this okay. Okay, right, let me just quickly double check that I've got that all right. Save that. So on my author page, yeah, my image is nice and big. But if I go to a single post page, it's the smaller size. So you can see how sometimes when these filters have been written in the code, they will allow you to pass other information that you can then use to decide how you're going to manipulate the value you're returning. So you're going to say, well, that's brilliant, but, you know, how do I know what these filters and action hooks are? Well, there's lots of resources. So I've already shown you the Genesis simple hooks. That's a good place to start. It gives you a list of hooks. I really recommend the Genesis visual hook guide because for me, it just really works being able to see visually where they all are and what they do. That's normally quite good to find out the name of the hook, and then I tend to Google it, which will usually take me to StudioPress snippets. Or if you just want to read through all the list of different hooks that are available, you can go to the Studio Press hook reference. And also there's just loads of tutorials written by the community. But there is also one other way, which didn't really occur to me for some time. And let me explain. What is the first rule of Genesis development? No, it's not cowboy coding. That really is the first rule of web development. So the first rule of Genesis development is don't edit the core files. And I took this really to heart when I started, and I thought I must have made a subconscious decision to never open the core files. Well, that's really a mistake because there's lots of great stuff in there. Okay, let's have a look. Where am I? So, for example, there was I needed to create I wanted to add some text to a category page around about here or up here, wherever, but only if there's posts existing. And I knew that the Genesis entry title was going to repeat that for every single entry title, so it would appear more than one page. And I knew that let's put the hooks on, it's easier. So the, yeah, where am I? Yeah, so I knew that Genesis before entry was going to repeat. As you can see, it repeats for every post. So therefore that wasn't any good. I knew that Genesis before loop wasn't going to work either because it will not have checked as to whether there were posts existing already. So it's a case of, well, how am I going to find out? And obviously a Google search result didn't produce anything or anything. So I'll be honest, I had a look around. Let's open up here. Oh, I should have made this bigger. I hope you can see. So have a look in the Genesis core files. Now, personally, I've found that a lot of the things when I'm looking for something is usually under lib, and then again under structure. And here we go. We've got a loops.php. Let's open up loops.php. And then it's a case of now you've got to think, okay, so what am I looking for? I'm in the core file, so what I'm going to look for? Well, a action, obviously there's got to be a line of code in this code that creates that action for us to add or add action to. And it's called a do action. Let me see if I can find one. Here we go. Oh, funnily enough, yeah. Here we go. Do action. And actually, this is the one I'm looking for. So a do action is a really simple line of code that just creates that trigger point. So this is a Genesis before while one. And then that's there and available for us to add our code to. So I know that the one I want is this Genesis before while. And how do I know that? So I'm in the Genesis standard loop function, which you may have come across before. It goes through and it checks to say, are you using old pre-HTML5 code? Well, we're not. And it says, if we have posts, brilliant. So we've checked to see that we've got posts. And then we've got this while have posts. And then we've got all these other do actions here. Here we got the Genesis before entry do action, another do action, Genesis entry meta, Genesis before the entry content, Genesis entry content. So this is basically just a mind of information with all these Genesis hooks available. Fantastic. So I know I want this one because it's after we've checked we've got posts and before we loop around those posts. So I can just write a nice simple function. I've written it already here. And if I add that into my functions, oopsie, sorry. I'm trying to bring that a little bit closer to the middle of the screen. So I've got my add action, Genesis before while, and then my GMW, add my text, and then I've just defined my function there. So let me just have a quick look. Save it. There we go. Okay, so on this post page, on this category page, where I have more than one post, my custom text only appears once. On my page with no posts, it doesn't appear. So that's brilliant. That works. And I must admit, it's when you find that little hidden snippet, that little hidden thing, it gives me a buzz, and it's probably one of the main reasons why I'm a developer rather than anything else. So I kind of hope that I've kind of explained a little bit about hooks and action hooks and filters. And if I actually just stop my screen sharing, okay. And I really hope I've made sense. And if you've got any questions, do just let me know. And yeah, oh, also I should point out that Chris Cochran is giving a talk in about 14 hours time on a very similar topic. So you can always catch that too. Okay, Peter?
Great session, Joe. So we had a collective group of people coding along with you in the comments.
Oh,
and adding their
fantastic.
2 cents worth. It was good. And we could see your screen. So I know you're a bit concerned about that, but we could see
Sorry. It just suddenly occurred to me, oh no, it's right at the bottom. You can't see it.
No, that's fine. You do have a couple of questions, and
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you one. I'm going to ask you a special one after it. He wants to know how many action and filter hooks does Genesis have?
No idea.
Of course, he's being mean, deliberately mean. So the second question that is more important is, can you stick around to watch Gary's session, which is coming up next? And you've got 20 minutes or so, and I want you to find a very, very difficult question that we can pose to Gary that he has absolutely no chance of knowing the answer to.
No, I think that's too hard. That's too hard. Find out something that Gary doesn't know? No.
There is a real question.
Okay.
Some advice on how should I charge my clients for such customization? How much is too much?
Oh,
it's a pretty open-ended question, but I don't know if you want to take that one.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking, oh, that's a business one. Depends on your client, how much they're willing to pay. Depends on how quickly and easy it is for you to do it. You know, just depends. I really couldn't say. Sorry, that's not really a question, but it's
a difficult one.
Yeah, it depends on the case, really. I mean, I must admit, for
very
for
much
my
for
sorry.
Oh?
Oh, you've dropped out. I didn't hear you. I think you're frozen. Oh.
Oh, you're back now.
You're still alive? Are you back?
Yes. Sorry about that.
Okay, sorry. What were you saying?
I think that's great. So that's it. Thank you very much for coming along and sharing your expertise. It was a very, very good session indeed. Enjoyed. So coming up on the hour now, we have the Genesis UK podcast. So that's in about 19 minutes time. So there's time for a loo stop or a sandwich. And Joe, don't forget to stick around and ask Gary extraordinarily difficult questions, okay?
I will do.
Good on you. Thanks so much for
Bye.
coming along and doing the session with us. Really appreciate it.
Bye.